What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another Bionicle 2015 set preview. Today, we're going to be looking at all the sets, an overview of every single TOA that is going to be released this wave, and kind of going over what I think about the sets, where I think Bionicle is going to go because of these sets, and just an overall look at the team dynamic between these sets. Now, I do want to preface this video by saying that every single one of these sets are incorrect in some way except for Tahu. Tahu is the only set here that features every single part that is in the retail version, and as such, there are really no differences between this build and the retail build. However, all the other ones have something missing or something wrong, and it's because we weren't able to get all the parts to create them. And if you aren't really exactly sure on the background of these sets and how we obtained them and whatnot, watch the individual reviews that I made for each one. I go in far more depth there. But for now, with this video, it's going to be a bit of a longer video than the other ones, and it's not going to be as flashy and professional. We're going to be talking about these and discussing what I feel about each set, and it's going to be a slower one, so keep that in mind. Now, each TOA kind of features a new look at the Hero Factory CCBS system that we've been getting for all our Ultra builds for a while now. It started with the superhero builds. Hero Factory has it. Chima. Anything with an Ultra build is using this new system, and it is designed in a way to make building a bit easier and also a bit more fun. And it allows more posability and action into the sets themselves. And this is the first wave of Bionicle that we've seen that actually uses this system, as it was introduced after Bionicle's cancellation. Now, one of the big issues that a lot of people had with the rumored Bionicle 2015 return and it possibly using the system would be that the sets wouldn't be as detailed as Bionicle used to be. And for the most part, I think LEGO has successfully managed to make these sets look very detailed and very unique looking for each individual set here. Not only are they able to use the CCBS system effectively, but I personally think that while there is definitely a new aesthetic, it's definitely a bit more plated, a bit more clean cut, there's still a lot of detail to be found in these sets, and it might not exactly look like the old Bionicle of yesteryear, but I definitely think it is a step up from anything Hero Factory gave us, and these sets are definitely going in the right direction. With that said, the most unique thing about these sets is, in fact, the gearbox system, which I covered for each individual set in their individual reviews. They all feature some kind of variation of the gearbox. But the gearbox is definitely what adds the new part count to them and is what raises the price, I do so believe. And it's a great feature because it actually adds more to these sets, and I feel like there's definitely a really good dynamic added to them because of this system. They're more than just toys now. They have a function, their build is more intuitive and interesting, and I think these sets really benefit from that more so than any other CCBS system out there. And I think one really good thing that LEGO has been able to do with these sets is, while keeping them fairly simple, fairly clean, they have also managed to make each set look unique and individual, and that is really spectacular because they all carry similar traits that make them look like they belong in a team. There's definitely a team dynamic. They don't look too radically different from each other to where they don't seem like they belong together. They definitely form a good team cohesion, but at the same time, they all have unique aspects of them that really bring out their character and give them all a unique silhouette. There's a very different presence with each set, and it's felt through all of them. And because of that, I would actually say that it is very much worth collecting all 6 of these sets. They are all very, very unique, all very individual, and there's something new to be found in each one. All their builds, while similar, are different in some aspect. They're not clones of each other, and that was something that old Bionicle definitely had an issue with up until the later years, but even then, the differences between later sets were typically pretty superficial, and while it might not be that big of an upgrade here, I still feel the builds are definitely unique for each one, and you're not going to get the same set with each purchase. But with that said, we do have the issue of price. Now, like I said, the gearboxes add quite a lot more pieces to these sets, and overall, they're a lot bigger than what we're used to for TOA. These do classify as Titan sets. At least 3 of them classify as what we would usually call with Bionicle Titan sets. Think Brutaka, Axon, or anything in that like class. That is what these Toa are. They've now upgraded from their canister sets into boxed sets. And because of that, the prices are higher and their builds are bigger. They are definitely towering above any other Toa that we might have had in the past. But that's interesting because only 3 of these are actually classified as Titans. The other 3 are, I guess, in between. They're not necessarily canister sets because that would be the Protectors fulfilling that role now. But they are boxed sets as well, and they're smaller. They're priced at $15 US, as compared to the $20 that Tahu, Anua, and Kopaka are running for. Gali, Pawatu, and Liwa are running for $15. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure if the price difference is really warranted. While the Titan sets definitely do have more pieces, the overall build really isn't that different. They're pretty similar. The Titan sets are slightly larger in some aspects, but for the most part, I feel like they still retain a very similar design, and the extra parts really don't add much to their builds. The only one I really think actually utilizes the extra part count and that price tag would be Anua. He's the only one that has a very unique build, and his extra parts definitely add to him the most. So in some aspects, that does kind of stink, because obviously as a big Bionicle fan, I want to collect all 6, and I know a lot of people would like to collect all 6 as well, but unfortunately, it's not the easiest thing in the world because the sets are so expensive now, and collecting all 6, it's almost $120, I think, just doing that off the top of my head. So, yeah, that's a lot of money for all 6 Toa, and before we could get that for way cheaper, and it's not really the same not having all 6. And they're meant to be a team, and it's great to collect them as a team. And if anyone's planning on reselling them, the value increases a lot more when you do have all 6 Toa. So it does kind of stink that getting all 6 is so expensive, especially when the extra price from all 3 really doesn't feel needed. Especially since these are marketed towards kids, it seems a little inconvenient for these sets to be so pricey. Luckily, Bionicle 2015 does offer some other sets for cheaper value. The Protectors are, from what we've seen, relatively great sets, and I know our friend VBBN from Eurobricks is going to be getting his review copies of the Protectors very soon, if not when this video comes out. So if you are interested in checking out what the Protectors look like, I would recommend going over to Eurobricks. But those definitely fulfill that role of cheaper sets for everyone to collect. Unfortunately, it just seems like they, while having unique builds, don't seem as unique because they all share the same mask, and that is kind of a big negative for me because I'm just so used to the mask being part of the character. It really shows their personality, their individuality, and I feel like them all having the same mask just kind of gets rid of that. That aspect is kind of changed, and it makes them all seem more clone-ish despite having different builds, and more so robots than actual characters. So the Toa are definitely the way to go, in my opinion, as far as actual sets go. They offer more, they bring more, and they're overall cooler sets than that of the Protectors. There's a lot included in the packaging here. There's a lot out of the box. You get your sets, you get dual functionalities, you get functionalities in general. Just gear functions is great. Playability-wise, that's spectacular. But at the same time, you're also getting a really good action figure that looks really, really cool. It's designed really well, and it's buildable too. So you can take it apart, mod it, do anything you want with it to make it appear better to your personal preference, or you can take it apart completely and use the pieces for your own creation. That's a lot coming out of one set. So really, all you have to get is one of these, and you'll have plenty of playtime. So each one of these really is a decent value despite the high price. And while it might be a bit inconvenient, being able to get your hands on one of these is really good. There's a lot of play value here. There's plenty of time you can spend actually just playing with one of the sets, so that's really great. And having all 6 just makes it all the better. But how do these sets actually live up in comparison to their older counterparts? Is this a good translation from Bionicle of yesteryear into now? Do these really live up to what Bionicle used to be? And to answer that question, I would say, for the most part, yes. I do believe that each set does carry very remarkably Bionicle-esque traits that was specific to that theme. But obviously each set retains a few different aspects from their previous versions, and I think it's a combination of their previous versions as well. Tahu, for example, definitely takes influence from not only his Mata version, which was released in 2001, but also his Nuva version from 2002. And while I don't necessarily see as many influences from his 08 or 010 versions, he definitely still seems to have been inspired by what we got before, and those traits are seen here. The dual swords, the howl, all these are things that are very Tahu, especially the lava board, so it helps them. Clear that the Bionicle team definitely went back, looked at original Bionicle, and kind of used that as their basis for this line. It was definitely the launching mechanism for this, and that's clearly shown to me. And I think it does a really good job of transitioning itself into something new, but also being very familiar. Simply seeing these sets, I could instantly recognize that these are Bionicle. They're not Hero Factory, they're Bionicle. It's very different. But as far as changes to their characters go, obviously we have our brief bios that were posted on Bionicle.com right now, and I'm not sure if those have been updated since they were initially released, but for the most part, it seems like their characters are fairly unchanged, with a few new additions to them, like Kopaka being clumsy or Gali being bad at jokes. Small little things like that were added, but that doesn't necessarily change their actual characters much, and I don't think they have changed really, but we won't be able to know that until the story starts coming out. But it is interesting to look at their characters in their builds. For example, Kopaka here is a very, very buff figure. He's pretty big, he's got some really heavy-duty weapons and heavy-duty armor as well, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily associate that with Kopaka. He always seemed pretty slender, he had a small shield and a nice sword. And I remember talking in the podcast, and I don't think it was ever released, but we talked about the characters and their preferred battle methods, and I know that we speculated that Kopaka was probably acting more as a fencer, who is most likely a very agile person, and uses that to his benefit. But here that has clearly changed, and obviously that is just our interpretation from the character of his past builds and what we've seen of that character in media presented to us. But from what we gathered out of what we were presented, it seems that that aspect of Kopaka has changed. He's no longer a slender, agile figure. He's more of a buffer, brutish person with large weapons to back it up. He's very armor-clad. He's very protected. He's kind of a tank now. And that seems to be the case with most of the three Titan figures, excluding Tahu, who probably looks the most agile of the three. So while there have been a few changes, and the stature of these sets and their weapon preference may have been maybe different now, I don't think it necessarily affects them as characters, and despite this being a reboot, they are still very much familiar to me, and I can't wait to see how they're actually utilized in the story and see what actually happens with these characters. But for now, there are no red flags. They all seem fairly standard Tahu, Gali, Pohatu. This is definitely the Toa we grew up with. However, I am looking forward to seeing a few new twists to their characters and seeing where they actually go. Now, as far as personal preference goes as to who is my favorite and who I think carries the best persona and presence and offers the most, I think personally my favorites are definitely Tahu, Onua, and Gali. I think they are the standout sets to me through build, through color scheme, through weapon design. I think all of that has a few factors to why I think they are my favorites, but obviously all six are great, and I think Leo is definitely a contender for the top there. He kind of got pushed back a little bit due to his head movement. His head movement is still very limited, despite making a few changes to his build to reflect a bit more retail accurate there, but his head movement is still very limited by his gearbox being so high up. So while I think he does have a good build appearance-wise, that the head movement really does knock him down a few points for me, and he definitely isn't my favorite three, despite being really, really close. And Kopaka is also a very spectacular set. However, I am on the same boat as a lot of people who feel that Kopaka isn't really the big, tanky character that is kind of portrayed here. So, based off my own kind of pre-established notions as to who Kopaka is, I don't feel like the set itself does the character as much justice as the other five. But with that said, the build itself is really, really good, and if it wasn't Kopaka, in my eyes, he would be a very, very fantastic set, and I can definitely see why people would love him. His only flaws to me are the added armor pieces. While adding a lot of bulk and making him look pretty cool, it does limit his posability. He can't bend his knees past a 90-degree angle like the other Toa can, and his arms are also kind of hard to bend as well, and I hate the way the shield connects to his hand. All they needed to do was just add one more piece, I think, and that shield would have been just fine, but the way it is now, it causes Kopaka to have to be forced to make some pretty awkward hand positionings to get the shield to actually point out and act like a shield. And I think that really limits his posability and it limits his playability as well. So overall, I'm not a huge fan of that. And I think that definitely knocks him down a few points too. Pohatu really has nothing wrong with him. He just doesn't really stand out to me as a set because he is the most simple of them all, as well as the smallest. So to me, I would be getting more out of any of the other 5 sets, personally, and I think those would make for better purchases. However, Pohatu does offer some really nice trans neon green bone joints here, and there really isn't anything wrong with his build. It's standard. You can't really go wrong with standard. It's just, to me, he seems the most bland. However, I am a big fan of the color scheme. I think the neon green, the brown, or the orange brown, and the gunmetal gray really work very well together. They're very complementary. So appearance-wise, the set is pretty good. But his fairly standard approach is what knocks him down a few points for me. He just doesn't really offer much as far as my personal preference goes. But once again, this is just how I feel about the set, and I'm sure a lot of people really love it. In fact, I know a lot of people really love it. So that is great for them, and he is definitely a very worthwhile purchase. But despite my minor complaints regarding these sets, I honestly don't think there's much wrong with these sets. I think they all do a great job. But with that said, where do I think these builds are going to take us as far as the future goes? And that's a really interesting thought, and I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be seeing out of the future Bionicle waves, but judging from these sets, I think we are definitely in good hands as far as complexity goes. I think the Bionicle team has definitely done a great job of making simple builds that also add unique, interesting, and complex different designs here that make the build fun to build, and I expect more of that in the future. Now, obviously, from talks at New York Comic Con, we know that Bionicle has been planned for 2 more years, which is standard for all LEGO lines, and at any point it could be increased depending on how well these sets sell. So from that, we already know that 2 more years are currently planned. Whether there are already sets that are ready to go, or just characters or stories kind of thought out, not really sure, but they've got 2 more years to go. So as far as the next wave goes, I'm not really sure what we're going to be seeing. Considering it's going to be a smaller wave, they're probably going to be Titan sets, or they'll be villain sets. Because so far, all we have, the Battle of the Toa, are little skull spiders, and while that is cool, they don't seem like they're that big of a match for the Toa. The Toa seem a bit overkill when it comes to the skull spider, so I imagine there's definitely a bigger threat to worry about coming in later in the year. So I think the next 6 sets will probably be villains, and they will probably be Titan-sized, or similar to the Toa, where there might be 3 Titans and 3 standards. Internally in the podcast crew, we have been speculating that we might see Akimu and Makuta. Now, I'm not exactly sure about that, because that seems like LEGO would be playing their cards pretty early, because Akimu and Makuta are kind of our deities of this wave, as they were last Bionicle, where Makuta is the big bad guy, and Akimu is our kind of big good guy. Like, these are the big guys. So it would seem a little strange to reveal these characters in set form so early on in Bionicle's lifetime, but I'm also used to old Bionicle always keeping secrets from us and withholding things until the very end, so obviously changes can happen. and these sets might in fact come out next wave. Hard to say. The only reason I would think Akimu would come out is because LEGO has been really advertising the Mask of Creation a lot, and that is the poster boy of this new wave of Bionicle. So it seems like somewhere, somehow during this year, we are going to be getting a set with that mask. Whether it's Akimu or not, I'm not sure, because we know Akimu is currently unconscious, so it could be any character really that we don't know yet, who may have stolen the Mask of Creation or is using it for some unknown reason. So we might still get the Mask of Creation this year, just not Akimu. But it does seem a little odd to have a set with a Mask of Creation and not be Akimu. So, I don't know, maybe we just won't see either. It's really hard to tell, because with Bionicle, knowing that this is a reboot, we really don't know what to expect. With this first wave, it was kind of easy to speculate what we'd be seeing and what these sets were going to be, because we already knew that with Bionicle means there's going to be some returning aspects, and obviously they're not going to start out a new wave of Bionicle with completely new things. There's going to be something returning. So it was very easy to kind of speculate what we would be seeing, and judging from the leaked pictures, it was kind of easy to speculate that, oh, okay, we're going to be getting the Toa Mata again. But with this new wave and a rebooted Bionicle, we could be getting anything. And for the next 2 years, it's really hard to tell what we might be getting. We might not even be getting new Toa each year. It might just be upgraded Toa Mata, kind of like what Hero Factory was doing, where you had Furno 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. It could be something similar to that, which, me being a Bionicle fan, I'm not a huge fan of, and I would like to see new Toa sets. But that is a big possibility. It really is completely open-ended, and it's hard to say what we might be seeing. But as far as the builds go, I think we're definitely going to be seeing more intuitive, more interesting and complex builds, and more utilization of the CCBS system in creative ways. Hero Factory played it pretty safe up until Invasion from Below, when they decided to do something really radically different with the mechs, and a lot of those sets were spectacular, and they offered very interesting builds that were different than the standard hero build. And with Bionicle, this has also been the case, and Chima has also offered some very unique builds as well. So I think for now, LEGO is very comfortable with their new system, and I think the sets themselves are going to appear much nicer and more interesting as the years go on. And hopefully next wave will be getting and hopefully next year we might be getting a larger number of new elements, and that will add just even more to the table. And it should be noted that Bionicle right now is starting off with a pretty clean slate, but the new elements already are more detailed than what we got with Hero Factory. So as Bionicle goes on, it's easy to say that we will definitely be getting more detailed parts. So the people that are complaining about Bionicle being too clean cut, don't worry too much, because I'm sure in the future we will be getting more pieces similar to these armor pieces here. Something more detailed, more Bionicle aesthetic-wise. So we'll definitely be seeing more of that. I think we'll be seeing more complex builds, more unique characters, very different characters than what we're used to, as this is a reboot. So I think Bionicle has a very good future here. I'm very excited to see what we're going to be getting soon. But with that said, that concludes our current line of Bionicle 2015 sets. Now, we aren't going to be getting the Protectors or Lord of Skull Spider early. So if you really can't wait and you want to see something about those sets, definitely check out Eurobrix's reviews on them. VBN's doing some great written reviews over there, so you can definitely get a nice look at those, and those are in fact the retail versions of the sets, so that also helps. We will obviously be doing reviews on the sets once they are officially out for public purchase, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to us for that if you're actually curious on what we have to say about the sets, because we will definitely be getting all of them. LJ will be doing reviews on the retail versions of the Toa, in fact, so you can see any differences between what our Comic-Con builds might be compared to the final sets. These are still technically prototype, and they still technically use prototype pieces. So from now till the retail, we don't really know what will be different. But that is about it, and I really thank you for watching. It's been fun. It was great to go to New York Comic Con and see all the fans and everything, and get these sets early. It was definitely a blast, and it's hard to imagine that we started covering this all the way back from the initial leak up until now, and we were able to get the sets early and everything. It's been quite the ride, especially coming out of that 5-year gap of no Bionicle. Make sure to check the ttvpodcast.com website for any updates, and join our forums. We always post exclusives there. These reviews have come out days earlier on the forums than have been on our channel, so stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.